Well, a very good evening to you and welcome to Unfiltered on SABC3 as well as SABC News Channel. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm your host, Criselda Lewis. Now, the spate of killings in the run-up to the 2016 local government elections led to the appointment of the Moerane Commission, which, of course, heard evidence about political violence in KwaZulu-Natal. And the commission was told at the time that armed hitmen at the Glebelins hostel with alleged police links kill with impunity. And with only a few weeks before South Africans go to the elections, there are fears of sporadic killings that have resurfaced, and the jostle for positions and power intensifies, and so does the threat on lives. Now, the memory of the killing of the former ANC Youth League Secretary and Umzimkhulu Municipal Councillor Sindiso Makaka was once again in the spotlight recently following the arrest and subsequent release of Herikwala District Mayor Mluleki Ndobe and his accomplice. Now, the new National Director for Public Prosecutions, Shamila Batoe, you'd recall a few days ago, expressed concern and even asked for a report from the KwaZulu-Natal Director of Public Prosecutions. So tonight, we ask you, why has so little been done to address the problem? You can share your views with us on SABC News Online, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, you can use the hashtag SABC News Unfiltered. That hashtag SABC News Unfiltered. Now, joining us in studio, first here in Johannesburg, is political analyst Professor Somadoda Figeni, and from our Durban studios, we're joined by the cousin of the late Sindiso Makaka, and joining him in that studio is Professor, of course, Paulos Zulu, who's from the University of KwaZulu-Natal's Politics Department. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us on this Sunday evening. I think let me start with you. Mr. Makaka, thank you very much for your time this evening. I want to talk about the recent developments in the case relating to the killing of your cousin. As a family, let's get your views, first of all, on what has happened over the last week or two or so.
Good evening. First of all, I would like to ask God to embrace Mamncane, that is Sindiso Makaka, with grace and faith. These are the hard times for him. Sorry for him. Okay. We are very much depressed about what has happened towards the death of Sindiso Makaka. He was shot on the 13th of July 2017. The arrests were made in September last year. There was one guy who was arrested, but later on some people were arrested. Let me thank the police for the work they've done. But now, on the day of the trial of the bail application, there were members who were released, of which now this gives us a problem or a question. Why? Just because we are hoping, or we hoped for a speedily arrest for the people who assassinated Sindiso Makaka.
Lwazi, we'll come to you very shortly. When I spoke to you a bit earlier on, you did express your dissatisfaction as a family, but I want to bring in Professor Paulos Zulu, who has investigated, or rather, researched political violence in that province since the 1980s. And Prof, I want to ask you, why do you think that the politics of money and of murder continues? You have spoken about this extensively. This is just but the latest incident, high-profile incident, where the Makaka family is asking for justice. Why does the politics of money and of murder continue?
I think the first thing that we have to say is, are the political killings in isolation? Number one, they are cyclical. In other words, they still seem to be tied to the politics of money, because the timing of the murders coincides with huge political events, where political opportunity will lead to some form of financial gratification. But before I go into that, I think another big question that we have to ask ourselves is, are political murders in isolation to other forms of murders and violence? Because we seem to have reached a stage of normlessness where circumstance leads or manifests in one way or the other. What I am saying is, because of the normlessness, political murders happen. It could be any other type of murder. Tax murders also happen. And all these are tied to some form of financial gratification. Or rather, let's go further. People get killed for cell phones, which in the perception of the killers will lead to some form of gratification.
Yeah.
Do we then ask a generic question? Is any pursuit for gain in this country to be accompanied by some form of elimination? In eliminating those perceived to be standing on our path to gratification.
Yeah.
I think we have a bigger question than just political murders. They happen to be located at that particular point in time because of circumstances. We have a bigger question of a nation that has turned to elimination and murder as a form of removing competition and opposition.
All right.
It's a breakdown in the normative system.
Prof, we will take a very short break. We're going very fast. Prof Somatota Figeni will bring you into this discussion just short after the break. Has South Africa turned to a process of eliminating the competition? We'll continue this discussion as we look at political killings in the run-up, of course, to that much-awaited May election here in South Africa. Of course, we'll also continue to chat to the cousin of the slain ANC Youth League Secretary, Sinjiso Makaka, also when we come back from the short break.
This serious deserves a glass of not so serious. Come fill yours with Tops at Spa.
It was a journey of self-discovery.
It started as a call to adventure.
Some of us leaped at it, some of us refused the call.
But inspired by our ideas to make Mzansi better,
we all crossed the first threshold.
The final 6.
The road of trials began. Not only were our ideas tested, we were tested.
But on a mountain of truth, you never climb in vain. We embraced our shadows and conquered our fears.
It was no longer about us. We discovered our essence in selfless service. From the judges, I learned an unwavering steadiness of purpose to look to nothing else, not even for a moment.
Except to reason.
Leadership is not about the next election, but about the next generation.
From One Day Leader,
we learned
and we became.
One Day Leader, Thursdays at 9 p.m. on SABC 1, Mzansi for sure.
The first thing that I think of when I hear GB, it's coughing.
First thing I I think about when I hear the word TB is, I get scary.
Die eerste ding wat ek dink as ek hoor van TB, dis 'n ernstige siekte en dis 'n siekte wat baie vinnig versprei.
That's all what I think. And the first thing which comes to my mind when I think of the word TB is a deadly flu.
So when they are put in hospital, then most of their family members do not come and visit them.
Struggle. First thing that comes to mind when I think about TB is danger.
But nowadays, people just think if someone has TB, they got AIDS.
Because of all the stigma around TB.
SABC1 brings to you My First.
Abanye abantwana bebengihleka bethi mbukeni lona akagqokanga iphenti mbukeni akafanga amakawusi mbukeni igqoka icathulo ingafani.
It really hurts me because I mean he's one of my family members which I heard the most.
I do cannot wrong 17 years. Next time I'm in.
Catch exhilarating experiences in My First every Monday at 6 p.m. only on SABC1. Mzansi for sure.
Hello again, welcome back. You're watching Unfiltered on SABC3 and SABC News Channel. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, we're asking the question, what should be done to stop political killings? Joining us here this evening in our studio in Johannesburg is Professor Somadoda Figeni, and from our Durban studios, we're joined by Professor Paulo Zulu from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, the politics department there, and also the cousin of the slain ANC Youth League Secretary Sinjiso Makaka. Lwazi Makaka joins us in studio. Let's take a look at Prof. Somadoda Figeni. We'll start with you this time around. If we take a look at some of those graphics that we're seeing on our screen, the numbers are quite alarming. Violence against councillors and municipal managers. Now, from this SALGA survey, about 60% of municipal managers are said to have been threatened. 30% reported that they were threatened frequently, and in 30% of those cases, the threats stopped when reported to the police. South Africa is clearly dealing with an alarming situation, and if we take KwaZulu-Natal into the spotlight, the political killings themselves continue unabated despite even a commission that had been held into dissecting what has led to these political killings in the province.
What you are seeing there is what Professor Paulo Zulu was saying, the normlessness in the society, the moral crisis, the violence in schools, the violence, the gender-based violence, the political violence, and all kinds of violence, gang violence and so forth, road rage, is an indication of a psychological collective crisis as well as a crisis in our systems. Now it expresses itself politically because in a state where economy is not doing well, other opportunities are not doing well, many have seen politics as the quickest way of going through. In order to do that, you are beginning to see a shift of political violence between political parties. It is now the intra-party within the parties, the factions trying to eliminate each other. So that is what we are beginning to see. As to why KZN seem to be more prone to this generally than others, it's a number of factors. Among those, you'll remember going to the 80s, the clashes between the IFP and the UDF, and later the ANC and the IFP and the UDM and so forth. All those do tell us that that particular province has been a lot more prone in settling these scores physically.
Prof, we'll take a look at some of the graphics that we have very shortly. I just want to bring in Mr. Lwazi Makaka. And, you know, Lwazi, I'm sure you can still hear me. You know what we've heard from the new National Director of Public Prosecutions, Shamila Batohi. After those charges had been withdrawn against the municipal manager and the mayor, she then is asking for a report from the Director of Public Prosecutions in KwaZulu-Natal, basically wanting to know what happened. Now, I'd like to ask you this particular question on the part of the family. Do you believe that there was political pressure brought on both the police and the NPA in this particular instance?
Yes, I believe that there was a political pressure just because the perpetrators were put in custody, but now they were also released with a statement saying the evidence is not enough. Now the charges are withdrawn. It may happen that this may be done just because we are going to the elections on the 8th of May or in the other way around. But clearly it shows something just because 2 have been taken out of court, but the others are still in custody. Now, which means that those who are not moneyed, they suffer. And those who are moneyed are in good position.
I'll come back to you again very shortly, Lwazi. Let's bring in there Professor Paulo Zulu as well. You know, Prof, for example, you know, you had dealt, for example, I'm just taking a look here with the process of the Charter of the Election Ethics that was developed in 1994, as well as the Charter of Positive Values. Since 1994 and to what we are seeing happening today, these political killings, of course, are continuing unabated. The body count continues to rise. What do you think then needs to be done to deal with this particular issue? Because the body count continues to rise. There doesn't seem to be the politics of the stomach clearly seems to be outweighing anything else in this particular instance.
I may not say what needs to be done. I might say why things shape the way they do. In the first instance, the factionalism has to do with the perceptions of the locus of power in the country. What do I mean by the locus of power in the country? Where individuals or groupings are aligned to particular factions because they believe that those factions are in control. This encourages perpetration with impunity because people do know that within the echelons of power, be these departmental, national, or whatever, there is a form of protection for perpetrating activities as long as people are aligned to what they believe to be the winning faction. Now, as long as things have not been corrected at the top, we are going to continue having problems. You would just have read papers over the last few days, dealings with the security system and the alignments, even at that particular level. I'm not saying apportioning blame to whoever. I am saying structurally, we have a massive problem. We have a normative problem. We have a structural problem where office, to a great extent, determines the shape of the normative system in the country. I'm not sure whether I'm speaking too much in the abstract.
Yeah. Don't worry about that, Prof. I just want to bring you in very, very quickly, very shortly, Prof. Vigeni, but I'll come back to you again after the break. Factionalism, of course, playing a crucial role in the current state that we see at the moment. Of course, political killings continuing.
It's not only factionalism. It's the patronage system and corruption which has weakened your police intelligence, your general intelligence, with power being personalized and institutions being weakened. Whether you talk NPA, you talk the police, you talk police intelligence, That is what has fed into this process. There is another element to this. Once those who are involved in this corrupt network are caught, our justice system is very slow. If you have the best lawyers around you, the access to justice can keep justice at bay for some time.
And I think that's what Lwazi Makaka referred to just a few moments ago, but we'll take a short break. We'll continue our discussion here on Unfiltered. Please stay with us. We'll have much more when we get back.
While painting the nursery and worrying about childcare, Lauren has an epiphany. Medical Aid offers some maternity benefit and 24/7 baby line to talk her through those new parent panic moments. Bring on that mini-me! That's real medical aid. Exciting, isn't it?
A meteorite hit the Earth 2 million years ago, creating an enormous impact of crater, about 10 kilometers in diameter, near Vredefort in the Free State, 100 kilometers southwest of Johannesburg, now known as the Vredefort Dome, a South African World Heritage Site. The meteorite is said to have been larger than Table Mountain and caused a 1,000 megaton blast of energy. The impact would have heated about 70 cubic kilometers of rock and have increased the Earth's oxygen levels to a degree that made the development of multicellular life possible. The world has about 130 crater structures of possible impact origin. The Vredefort Dome is the largest in the world, followed by Sudbury Crater in Canada and the Chicxulub Crater in Mexico.
Get the facts first.
In 1994, ek dink was ons almal was ook baie excited geweest.
For South Africa, art was never a good thing.
From a footballing point of view, there was never a separation.
Get to the truth.
There's still some serious issues in South Africa.
Maar ek dink die regering kan regtig probeer om harder te werk om
ke apartheid in Sutlile ke le ke sola ke batho ba rena ba democracy batho ba batsho e se makgowa.
See what it all really means.
Ek is geel, want dit is die kleur in die verkeerslig wat vir jou sê wees versigtig.
I still give South Africa red.
We are somewhere in between.
We're giving our democracy a green for sure. We're very happy.
But God,
Democracy Gauge, weekdays at 5:30 on SABC News, Channel 404.
I use my name first and foremost, that's all I heard, and from using the name I got a small loan of 8,000 rand.
I remember there is a time la sa zama kumfunela umsebenzi.
Hello again. Thank you very much for staying with us. Political killings don't only affect families and relatives of the deceased politicians. It also has a direct impact on service delivery as councillors and municipal managers resign, some of them in fear for their safety. Our guests, of course, still with us, political analyst Professor Somadoda Fikeni here in Johannesburg, and from our Durban studios we're also joined by Professor Paulos Zulu from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, as well as the cousin of slain ANC Youth League Secretary Sindiso Makaka. He joins us, Lwazi Makaka joins us from our studio there as well. Gentlemen, thank you very much for staying with us once again. Lwazi, I think let's just come to you on this particular one. You testified before the Moerane Commission. You had quite a lot to say in this particular instance. And with what we are hearing now, also from Prof. Fikeni, there seems to be somewhat a complacency within the law enforcement agencies for them to be able to do their work. Do you think that in this particular instance, it has taken way too long. While there are individuals currently who are in custody for their alleged role in the killing of your cousin. But do you think justice will ever be seen in this particular instance? And a particular issue that I want you to also allude to. I also understand that the Makaka family also wants the cases removed from Mzimkhulu. Can you tell us why?
Yes, ma'am. We are, as a family, not that we are not happy about the case that is held at Mzimkhulu. My second name is knowledge. I am not knowledgeable enough about the law. I don't know the stages that are taken in order the case to be taken to the High Court. But if this can be done, I think we as a family, we can be happy we can be happy. Another thing is the period from 2013 July, 2013th of July 2017 up to August or September 2019. And also, this time, there are people who are inside, behind bars. There are others who are outside bars. Now, there is an instability there. There is an instability.
All right, Lwazi, I think just very, very quickly, I'm afraid we're going to run out of time here. Prof. Zulu, very, very, very quickly. We're really running out of time. We really need to go to news now. Your final remarks on this issue, very quickly.
My final remark will pertain to the entire moral system in South Africa. We need to stop paying lip service to morality and ethics or claiming to be a revolutionary society simply because we want to get into political office and get the rewards thereof.
All right.
This country is in crisis. Normlessness, we have street violence when people protest.
Yes.
We have violence when students in universities protest.
All right.
Violence has become so endemic as a mode of expression in South Africa.
All right, Prof. Thank you so much.
Underlying just one last word.
Yes.
Underlying everything is a callous regard for humanity.
All right, we have 50 seconds left.
You.
Prof. Figeni, your last words on this particular issue?
I think the hopeful signs are that you have a new NPA leader who has a chance to professionalize.
Yes.
You do have a drive. The society sees the crisis now, where we can turn things around, develop the intelligence capacity, professionalize the police, deploy the right people. Those are the hopeful signs, but it will take time.
All right, thank you very much for your time. I'm afraid that's all we have time for here on SABC News on Unfiltered. Thank you very much for joining us until we meet next week, Sunday again. Thank you very much to our guests, Professor Somadoda Figeni, Prof. Paulos Zulu, as well as the cousin of the slain ANC Youth League Secretary, Sindiso Makaka, Lwazi Makaka, joining us from our Durban studios. We'll see you again next week, Sunday. Good night.